Hi there, and welcome back to the all-new series All You Need to Know About Tattooing, Line by Line by Steve Lee. So in this video we're going to be talking about some of the simplistic essential art supplies for any tattoo studio. And starting off of course with that is the pencil. And to accompany that is a rubber. I prefer these pen type rubbers. Faber-Castell make a great rubber in a pencil form that you can sharpen up with a pencil, get a really tight close nib then for cleaning off any lines that you may want to remove to tighten up. Also a mechanical pencil is a great tool to have when obviously you're sketching out your artwork. And then a couple of fine nibs or fibre nibs as well, they're quite good, of the black lining pens to create those bold black lines. It goes without saying, for standardised pencil, a little pencil sharpener. As well, to accompany the pens and pencils rubbers, some good tracing paper is always an essential thing. So good quality tracing paper is always a great thing to have around the studio. Now in the previous episode we spoke about the 3 pencil trick, and we spoke about how to get the symmetry right using the lighter tones of colours to sketch down boxes and circles and shapes to give you those symmetrical edges if you were working, say, like getting a rose type shape or an old school flower or something like that, to create something similar to this. Now as you can see, I've started out again, the same kind of thing, sketched out the symmetry with a light coloured pen, then I went in with a umber orange type pen and then finished off with a black one. Once you've got that basic design down, you can then stencil that back over onto some tracing paper, give yourself some nicer, bolder, neater lines then to actually work from. Now hopefully if you've watched the first video and you've looked at the 3 pencil trick and you've gone from using that basic concept and you've got down some of your own artwork, you should have a little portfolio gathering up now of all these different kinds of images that you've been sketching out. And that's what we're going to go on to today now. We're going to go on, once you've got yourself a little portfolio together of all this kind of artwork that you've been amassing, sketching down and creating a little portfolio of art to then work from, you can collage together to create bigger pieces. That's what we'll be concentrating on today. I'm going to spin the camera around in a minute and I'm going to use the light box, which is not an essential item for this, but if you can get hold of a light box, it does make it a lot better, a lot easier to see when you've got the tracing paper laid over. Like I say, it's not an essential part. You could use a glass table and put a light under there to do the same kind of thing. Now I know there's going to be plenty of people out there who are going to be looking at this video and they're going to be going, old ways, Photoshop, that's the way forward. And you know, to be quite honest, Photoshop is the future when it comes down to a lot of the kind of tattoo designs that are out there now. You know, and especially when you're creating stencils for more realistic kind of artwork. But for now, we're going to be concentrating on this method, a light box, a simple light box or tracing paper and your images. I will be going in depth into Photoshop. Like I've said before in the previous video, Photoshop is a fantastic tool for the art industry. And going on from that, I will build up through how to create stencils for realistic portrait type work as well using Photoshop. There's many tricks and tips that can be learnt from Photoshop, but it can all be done down here at this fundamental basic level using pens, paper and tracing paper, light boxes if needed. So without further ado, we will switch the camera over now. We're going to put a few compositions together, and then when we find a composition that we like, we will then draw that out. I'll draw it out in real time for you, and then you can see the actual methodology behind it and how you can create these elaborate designs from this portfolio of stencil work that you've created. And moving on from that, in the next videos we will be talking about mediums like the hectograph papers for machines and the carbon papers for the manual of stencil work. I'll also be going into how to make your own stencil fluid. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is I'm just thumbing through, or fumbling through in some instances, a couple of the designs that we're going to look at making a composite of. So you see, once you've got all these images at hand, you can start to composite, making up some more complex designs that may suit your customers' needs. So I'm just playing around here with a lamp, a stag's head and a bird. Not too happy with that, I don't think. And as you can notice here, I'm just slapping a piece of glass over the top there just to flatten everything down, just to give you a better view of it. And normally all I'd do is I'd put a large sheet of tracing paper back over that if the composite was what I liked. So I'm going to try a few more different images and just mess around and see if I can come up with something that takes my fancy. I kind of liked this idea so much that I went and drew this one off screen after I did the initial one that I decided to do. But I kind of like this composition. It's quite symmetrical. It'd work in a lot of locations as a tattoo. So like I say, off screen I did actually redraw that one, and you'll get to see that later on. Again, trying different composites here, using a bird with the skull. Again, I didn't really like that composition, so I kind of decided to move on. Although it's not too bad, it's relatively decent. It just was lacking something down near the jawline of the skull, for my preference anyway. And moving on here, I'm trying something different. Kind of ended up liking the look of this and settled around an image slightly similar to it. Again, using the glass there just to press it down so that you can get a better depiction of what the composite looks like as it's flattened down over the top of each other. And this is where I'm saying the light box does come in handy, because obviously that light reflecting underneath is bringing out each sheet of the paper through each other, whereas if you didn't have that light box there, you can still get away with it. You know, you can just about see it, and it's just a case of drawing out the image afterwards. Again, this was another image that I kind of liked. Kind of like the composition of this. Obviously bringing the rose down a little bit further to the neck. And again, possibly even with a double feather on there, maybe a jewel on the forehead, maybe even a tie in her hair. But all this can be added to later on. You're getting a generalised composition together, and you can see how fast you can swap and change an image around using this style. Again, you can see I'm levitating back to that skull. It must have intrigued me at the time, and I kind of thought that would be the one that I'd go with. Now I think on the final design, idea of the design, I kind of moved the bird down off the horns and more onto the actual skull itself. I'm now going to tape down the edges of the tracing paper and position everything where I want it finally. I've gone from moving the bird from the actual horns further down onto the actual skull itself, just tightening up the composition of the piece, just making it so that it wouldn't be too elongated. Elongated would fit nicely for an arm or even a thigh leg, but just for say like to tighten it up so it would actually fit into smaller areas as well. I just kind of like that composition being that little bit tighter. Now as you can see, I've taped down the large sheet of tracing paper, which is going to be the final stencil at the end of it, and that large sheet now I can lift up and down to actually see what I'm doing. You can see again, as I was explaining earlier, how that light box now with all those different layers of tracing paper over the top of each other, it's actually still giving you enough to come through so that you can actually shade out and draw those lines. Just follow all the lines around now, obviously omitting the parts that overlap that you don't want to be seen. So like where the hairline is and the horn were behind the bird, the rose on the neck, things like that. You know, just draw the new image layered as it would be, as if you were using say like Photoshop and you were using layers on Photoshop. It's a similar kind of thing. Each layer over the top. This is just obviously a more simplistic way, the old school way of doing that kind of thing that Photoshop has taken over with now. But as I was saying, and as I will say in the leading out of this video, that Photoshop's a fantastic tool, but for somebody who's starting out in tattooing, these old methods are far better. As you can see, using that pencil now to follow around those lines, it means that muscle memory, and I've already traced out then that tattoo, them shapes, those images countless times. So when it comes down to actually tattooing this into the skin, you've already got those kind of lines ingrained in your mind. If you're using something like Photoshop and it's just cut, paste, delete, edit and print, you know, you aren't instilling this into your mind. In my eyes, it's far better to be doing this kind of artwork, tracing it out, you know, than relying on technology to do things for you. Because when it comes down to the actual tattooing, that technology is not going to do anything. You know, it may have created the image for you by you compositing it on the computer, deleting it layer by layer, and then finalising it and printing it out. But you've had no prior knowledge of every one of those lines. In the same way as I'm now sketching this out, I drew out the images prior to this. You know, I created the images by using the 3 pencil rule, and then I redrew those again out over some paper just to create a fine lined image version of it. And now I'm compositing it and I'm drawing over it again. So in some instances, these images have been drawn 3 and 4 times over. You can see what I was talking about in the previous video about having the camera over my shoulder while I was drawing then. It's quite easy that you can knock it, and I did get a bit of a shudder going there, but you know, I'm not going to edit them out. So as that composition's coming along now, tracing every one of those lines that I want in there, and then there's nothing stopping you once you've got this final drawing down. There's nothing stopping you tweaking it, adding slight things to it, putting little insets and dints into the circle of the eye. again, it's just refining your art. The more times that you do this, the more repetitive it becomes, the more second nature it becomes. You know, and somebody who's using Photoshop could probably say, oh well, I'd have that bagged off in 15 minutes, all done, dusted, printed out, resizable. And it's a great tool, Photoshop, and especially for that option for resizing, it is a fantastic tool for that. But there's nothing stopping you, once you've actually created your designs like this, scanning them into, say, something like Photoshop, or another simple art package. It doesn't have to be Photoshop. There's a lot of old school photographic softwares out there, Photo Plus. Even in some instances, Paint package, you could take a photograph of this on your mobile phone, upload it to your computer. You could then rescale it in Paint and then print it out. You know, you've got the options to do that. This is just refining your skills as an artist and a tattooist, and nothing better than to get down to the bare bones of it, creating them like this, like they would have done, you know, back in the millennium. You're not far off now, really. That design's going down. And once I've rolled round this with the pencil, I will then remove everything from underneath, and then I will black line everything, which will then make that image permanent on the tracing paper. And as you can see there, I'm lifting it up. What I'm doing there, you can't really see off camera, but when I'm lifting it up, I'm actually glancing at the top sheet of tracing paper to see how much of the image I've got down. In a similar kind of way, if I was doing a manual stencil, which we will be going into in the later videos, but if I was doing a manual stencil, I would be drawing that out using the carbon paper and lifting the sheet up and holding it to the light to see if I've missed anything out. And as I say, I will go along that. I will show you all those little tweaks and tricks later on. We've traced around the actual composition. I'm now taking away the large tracing paper that we've actually got the main composition on now, and taking off the smaller elements that we created the composition with. At this point now, we've pretty much done with the light box. As we were saying, it's not a necessity, but it just makes life a lot easier. So now we've got the composition together. I've turned off the light box, and we can now start to blacken these lines out using one of the fine tip black pens. I do apologise if I knock the camera, with it being over my shoulder. It's hard work sometimes not to dislodge it. And here now I can actually rotate the actual image round a bit, which is something that I generally do a lot of when I'm drawing these lines through. Obviously, once the tracing paper is all taped down and you've got your compositions underneath, it gets slightly harder to do that. But here I'm just going to rotate round, just make life a little bit easier for me to reach these lines as I'm drawing them out. It's quite a nice composition. I would probably change slightly the jawline of the actual skull if I was to tattoo this, but as it's just for an example, I quite like the composition of it all. So just going through now, just filling all these lines in black until we get a nice black tattoo outline of a stencil. Any kind of areas of it that I don't like, I'll just tweak as I go along. I'll just add in a few little dips and dimples just to give the leaves better shape. and it's just all to your preference really. Now as you go back over these lines, you can tweak certain areas, make it slightly different, but all in all you've got that composition rather quickly. And if a client was asking for something of this nature, then it hasn't taken you that long really to put it together. But it does go to show that you can create quite elaborate images by using that 3 pencil rule to get yourself some small flash art together, and then by using the tracing paper and a light box, composing it all, creating an even greater tattoo, even larger stencil with a lot more intricacy. And you just build up on everything, the repertoire of what you've got, you just keep building up on it. The more drawings you do, the more small compositions you do, you know, it's just the same as the composition we've done here from those small pieces of artwork. It's just exactly the same as if you were, say, going to do a large thigh or a large back piece. You know, you can composite it all together to create that vast image that you want. Each time you put a few small images together to make a composite, you can put a layer composite on top of a composite and create even larger and larger and larger pieces of work. So you can understand that, you know, once you've got those designs to hand, how fast you can actually start getting those large elaborate pieces of artwork out there. Again, little tricks and tips that a lot of people don't want to share, but on this channel I'm going to bear all. And just from those simplistic images is emerging something that is starting to take shape. And like I say, you can go one further from this. You can either shade them out, or you can actually, you know, colour them in with watercolours or pro markers, so that your customer could actually see the actual colours that they're going to be getting in the tattoo, or just sketch it out and use pencil to show what it would look like, just grey wash shaded. And just rolling in the line work on those horns, antlers. But all in all, I'm quite happy with that composition. There was a few, as I was saying before, there's a few compositions that I stumbled across as I was putting them all together that I quite liked, and I did draw out a few of them off screen. The more and more artwork you can add to your portfolio, the better. It may not suit everybody's taste, but there will always be somebody that you will come across that likes that style. And just finalising now the last few lines on the bird. And as I say, you know, to get creative ideas, there's nothing wrong with, you know, going online, getting photographs, taking ideas from the images of the photographs, from nature, from the birds, animals, all kinds of different animals. There's loads of images of skulls out there, you know, that you could actually use, that you could draw from, draw inspiration from, and create your own images. You know, don't let people say to you that, you know, you're short tracking by using tracing paper and stenciling. You know, some of the greatest artists in the world, like Leonardo da Vinci, used to use similar kind of techniques and methods to do their portrait work. And there you go, a nice little composition finished up. So let's take a quick recap on what we've done today. We've taken small images like these that we drew using the 3 pencil trick from the first video, and hopefully you've got yourself a small portfolio of images together by using that technique. And we've been compositing them together to create a far more elaborate design like this. Now, when I was doing the designs earlier on, I stumbled across another composite that I liked, which was this, and I took that one step further off camera and I shaded it out to give it a more of a grey wash shaded appeal to it. Now, say a customer decides that they want certain elements put into their tattoo, then if you've got all these small designs at hand, you can composite these designs together to create a custom design tattoo for your client at a faster pace. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to say, well, Photoshop, you know, you can cut, paste, edit and print and have that design out there. And that's true, that can be done that way, that's not a problem. But at this moment in time, we're talking about the very bare basics, somebody starting out tattooing, not having the expense of a large computer with processing power, all the software added to it. Now, I know there's a lot of free softwares out there like GIMP, which has been created on the Linux platform, and I'll go into that again when I'm talking about Photoshop in the later series. But for now, we're going to keep down to this fundamental basics of using the stencils, the tracing paper and the images to make those composites. That way, you're still going to be able to get out those custom designs to your customer fast and saving yourself time and money. I'd like to give a big shout out to Matt and Lily at M&M Custom Irons. They build custom machines and custom coils. You guys ever need any custom machines? They build all my custom irons and coils. They run on Facebook, Instagram, they've got an eBay account, and they also have mnmirons.co.uk. So if you ever need anything doing, give them a shout.